Would like to introduce our first keynote. Noam Paransky is the Chief Digital Officer at Tapestry. As part of this great e-commerce acceleration, customer retention is one of the most important topics right now. And e-commerce businesses have acquired record numbers of new customers in the past 18 months, and getting them to buy is critical. And so to share some insights on this topic, we're very fortunate to have Noam with us today. He's, as I mentioned, the CDO at Tapestry. That includes Coach Kate Spade and Stuart Weitzman. Prior to that, he had an amazing background. He was running all of digital at Gap, spent a number of years in strategy consulting, and he's a Pittsburgher, so he has that going for him as well. So please join me in welcoming Noam Paransky.
How's this crowd of real live people doing this morning? Awesome, awesome. Let's hear it, Tapestry section. Come on, come on. I am really stoked to be together in real life with all of you, and also want to acknowledge, apparently we have a lot of people in the live stream. That's amazing, but want to thank Veronica, Scott, and Alan for making this happen. I think there are a lot of last-minute gymnastics, so let's give them a round of applause for getting us all together. All right, so as Scott mentioned, I'm Noam. I'm with Tapestry. If you don't know who we are or what we do, here's a 65-second video. Let's roll it. All right, so $1 billion in digital sales growth over the last 2 years. How did we do it? Well, many things, and a great team, and great partners. But a critical enabler of that is the marketing approach and tactics that we took, along with how we embraced the millions of new customers that came in support of that growth. So I'm going to talk briefly this morning to kick us off on some of those philosophies and approaches that we think are a more future-proofed approach to marketing in this kind of new normal. Okay. So let's start at a high level, maybe 10,000 feet, or maybe even much higher, up in outer space where the billionaires are hanging out. Okay. We're all marketing and digital professionals. We're all friends here. At the highest level, I think and I hope we can agree, we're trying to do basically the same thing here. 3 things I think we can all agree on. Reach the right customer with a relevant message. Everyone says I think we can agree on that. Manage investments profitably. We want to grow our businesses. We want to get more funding. We want to drive more growth. Easy enough. And then we want to drive that brand heat and the commercial results that come along with it. Light that fire, that spark, that magic. Okay, so that seems easy enough, right? So what's the problem? Okay, it should be fundamentally easy. What's the problem? Okay, so we've become very dependent on platforms to bring us in new customers, okay? They may not know everything, but historically they've certainly known a lot more than us. But then there's a little bit of a challenge. We all work with multiple platforms, but somehow 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 equals 27. That's not possible, but in the old normal it kind of worked, okay? And then, finance would play along, right? Finance is kind of the governor of marketing. We talked about that fuel that we need to drive growth. So we would tell them we're making these amazing returns. They'd say, okay, you keep getting these returns, we'll keep giving you money. And then they say, this report that you're giving me, these campaigns over here, these are driving 4 or 5 times more return than these other ones. So let's put more money here. I'll fund you if you put money over here. And that created a center of gravity, pulling spend in many, many brands down into the lower funnel, robbing the upper funnel of fuel, and then ultimately constraining what you could even do in the lower funnel. And then, we were looking at pieces of our business. We were looking at this platform and this platform and this platform, unable to create a holistic view. So the 1 + 1 + 1 couldn't equal 27, but we operated that way. And perhaps that was okay for a certain period of time. But then this has been happening, right? The iOS privacy settings, the sad, sad death of the cookie. Okay? So, heard some chuckles. So, if you're one of those for whom the world has changed, and I'm going to hazard a guess that it's almost everyone out here and almost everyone in the live stream, well, what do? Well, here's what we view as the new rules, which really should have been the same as the old rules, but who's counting? So let's talk about that. Okay. So first off, it starts with the customer. Okay? Everyone says that, but what does it mean? Okay, so for us it means be intentional in who you're speaking to and what you're saying. Okay? Develop a plan around the journey, around the customer or the customer segment, and that experience that you want them to encounter, okay? End to end, be building that hypothesis. Don't fall into the trap of this platform will get me this, that platform will get me that, and kind of spraying and praying. And then, work to make interactions meaningful. Kind of, here's the trick. There tends to be bias in like this channel is good or bad. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as a good channel or a bad channel. Every customer touch point has an equal opportunity to create a positive, neutral, or negative impression on the customer. So that most important channel is the one that the customer is engaging with you now and today. So embrace it. Seize that moment. Okay? And as you're building these journeys and you're thinking about your strategies, start with your data first. In the old world, I think a lot of folks started with the platform data first. Start with your platform data, have your engagement strategy, then connect it up to the platforms. Okay. And then we all talk about being customer-centric and what that means and executing customer centricity. Okay? But what is not measured is not optimized or driven. Okay? So you need to have a customer plan. Your chief merchant, they have a merch plan. They have a plan. Your CFO has a financial plan. They have a plan. So we have our customer plan. The customer plan allows us to understand across various compositions of customer groups how much merchandise we can sell. Calibrating, triangulating now with the merch plan and the financial plan. Okay? And it creates a fundamental shift in dynamic in the organization, because now marketing can be a driver of planned growth, coming with a bottoms-up quantitative framework that says, okay, we can accomplish X with our customers and what we can do from an engagement perspective. I think folks were generally able to predict what new customer behavior would be, but now when you really focus on retention and activation, you can say, okay, this is what we can drive. So now marketing has a seat at the table to drive growth. Not just a function that's helping to achieve the plan, or even worse, the piñata when on rare occasions the plan isn't hit. Okay? And then, you have to measure the returns holistically of that working media spend. So we talked about the 1 + 1 + 1 whatever equals 27. Like, that fundamentally doesn't work, and it really doesn't work now with the opacity that we talked about with the iOS privacy settings and the death of the cookie. So we have an approach that we think works, which is we use an econometric and multi-touch attribution hybrid approach that allows us to understand for every dollar of marketing that we put in against those customer groups, how much profit do we derive? So that allows us to be in lockstep as an organization to build a reasonably well-composed, full funnel plan, and pulls us out of the trap of finance saying, hey, cherry pick these high return, lower funnel activities. Okay. And then let's talk about the don'ts. Okay, the don'ts I would characterize as fight the odds. There's goodness in even doing the don'ts, but it's with caution. So play the odds would be the positive statement around this. Okay. Viral moments are awesome, amazing, exciting, energizing. They help to really drive, differential outcomes in awareness and consideration. But you can't count on them day to day. Assuredly, you can work on setting the conditions that more and more of these catch fire, and that's great. But a campaign, an idea, a concept is not bad or wasn't successful just because it didn't take off virally, right? So you need to marry up the viral campaign and moment and creative, right? Even the stuff that I would lovingly describe as the equivalent of like a 9-minute drum solo, and create the choice cuts of that you can then be ready and able to traffic in the working media, because you can count on that. And so you've got both sides of the coin working together. Another trap that I see people fall into is chasing the highest value cohorts, okay? This is where art meets science and strategy meets reality, right? Everyone can read a customer report and predicted lifetime value and say, yeah, that cohort's worth 8 times more than this cohort, so let's go get more of those, okay? But you gotta play the odds and actually build a body of work to get there. So let's use omni-channel customers as an example. Maybe a CEO says, we need more omni-channel customers. They're worth 10 times more than the one and done customers. Yeah, okay, but let's play the odds, right? What you wanna do is be creating life cycle engagement, nurturing the relationship to create a second purchase, a third purchase, a fourth purchase, et cetera. Because for most of us in the crowd and on the live stream, if you've got online and stores and she buys online, odds are somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 to 10 that her next purchase is going to be online. So don't fight unnatural behaviors. Create the engagement, the always-on desire, the increase in frequency, the great omni-channel experience, which doesn't mean sameness, it means creating the right experience at each of the touch points. And ultimately, she will likely migrate to being an omni-channel customer. But in the process, you took her from a 1 to a 2 to a 5. And you're creating lifetime value all the way. So it's just very critical. Play the odds. Don't stack the odds against you. Okay. And now we get to kind of like the subtext of, what are we talking about here in this session? So it's about driving lifetime value, okay? And, it's fundamentally about increasing frequency. And that sounds easy, right? It's like saying, hey, let's drive more revenue. But what I would ask all of you in the crowd to think about is, are you marshaling all of your organizational's resources and firepower to drive frequency? Or is frequency happening in the ether, randomly? And so, are you leveraging your best models, data, and thinking to make decisions about the journeys that people are going on? Is your best creative available for retention and reactivation campaigns? And then fundamentally, are you investing in that dialogue with your customers, okay? Because, fundamentally, people will often say, and this is, I think, untrue, that, working media is for acquisition. Owned media is for retention. I fundamentally believe that that's an antiquated approach. It's kind of the equivalent of rowing in a boat with one oar when you have two. Don't do that. Use both oars. You're going to go straight and fast if you do that. So, how does that come to life? So we have a strategy framework we lovingly call the 9-box grid, which is one of many reasons why I'm not a CMO or a copywriter, and the Tapestry group over there just started to groan because they see this too often. Okay, so we talked about the scenario earlier where your CFO wants you to play down the lower funnel because they're really good at math, and we told them that that's where the best returns are, and so that's where the center of gravity went. And then as the marketer, you probably wanted to be in the upper left. You wanted to drive those amazing brand campaigns and bring in new customers. But those two approaches are incongruent. They won't work hand in hand. They won't scale. They won't drive your business or your brands forward. Okay, so here's an example of what our plans might look like without getting too exact here. Size of the bubble is essentially how much spent. Okay? And what you can see is a balance of spend across the buckets, ultimately keeping us from getting into the challenge of being pushed down the lower funnel, creating a balanced amount of spend so that you can drive the channels holistically. So you can put your weight behind retention, of course, use your own channels, but marry that up with the working media channels so that you're not just composed down in the bottom in a kind of monolithic framework, nor are you only up in the upper left. And that will help your retention programs to clip along much, 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 much faster. Okay. And then, as you think about customer plans, retention programs, okay, you want to think about the strategies that are going to drive real share. Just driving frequency, of course, doesn't happen. You want to think about how can you be there more often to drive frequency, but also how can you drive that subcategorical and categorical expansion, which for us is literally wallet expansion. Okay? Very, very critical that that's all part of your customer plan. Okay. And then, the growth that we talked about, the past billion and then hopefully the next billion, doesn't happen without great teams to drive acquisition and retention programs, build great digital experiences, and so on and so forth. So we're making a gratuitous plug here. Over the next 12 months, we're hiring over 150 people in Tapestry Digital. If you're looking for a change and a significant challenge, you can come join some of my Tapestry colleagues over here. So if you're potentially interested, please hit up myself or one of my Tapestry and brand colleagues. Thank you for your time today. It's going to be a wild and crazy holiday. I think we say that every year, but I actually fundamentally believe that this holiday is going to be beyond wild and crazy. So I wish everyone luck and be excellent, and I look forward to engaging with many of you in real life over the next couple of days here at the conference. Thank you.